Hi everyone, SweetJohnnyCage here. Today I want to talk to you about being a left-handed PC gamer and the challenges we face a lot of the time. So you'll notice here my mouse is on the left side, not the right side, although things are flipped in this video, but you get the point. So there's a lot of considerations when playing PC games that developers, I find, either just don't know about or don't consider. And a lot of times it's because, only 10% of the world's population is left-handed. That's like the common stat that goes around. But even fewer left-handed people use the mouse on the left side. A lot of folks just grew up conforming to the right side. However, not all of us can do that. I don't have the same precision with my right hand that I do my left hand, even though, oddly enough, I grew up playing sports right-handed sometimes. Like, I throw left-handed, but any stick, baseball bat, hockey stick, lacrosse stick, anything, I hold in a right-handed position. It's very odd, I know. I'm like a minority among minorities here, but my parents are left-handed. My mom is left-handed. My dad's left-handed. And so growing up with a PC, the mouse is on the left side of the computer for us. My sister is right-handed, so she would either go like this a lot of the time, which is super uncomfortable for her, or eventually she would just start moving the mouse over. But because we had the PC on the left side, the cable wasn't long enough for her, so it became a problem for her. Anyway, left-handed people just causing a ruckus over here. So I want to talk to you about what it's like gaming on PC as a left-handed player and the challenges that we face, especially if there are any game developers watching out here. Please reach out to me, reach out to a left-handed gamer when making your game, especially when you want to give it to people in early access. Make sure you have a Keybind menu available, or at the very least console commands to edit keybinds, or possibly like an INI file to just hard edit in a folder somewhere. Please give it to us. Like, we want to play your games, but please give us the ability to play your games. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up Valorant here. I guess disclaimer, I do work for Riot Games. I don't work on Valorant. I work in esports, so I'm not part of the game dev team or anything. But just Valorant's like a easy example to use because it's, one, very popular, but also like I could show you this using Quake, but nobody plays Quake anymore. Really hardly anybody plays it, I should say. And so probably wouldn't be as helpful. But it's a shooter, so the same sort of idea applies to pretty much everything. So pretty much every PC game out there, if you're right-handed, will be using WASD and then the mouse. So WASD is to move, spacebar is to jump. On this side, you might have control being crouch, shift being to walk, caps lock will bring up the map, tab will bring up the scoreboard. Tilde, back in the day, was to bring up the console. However, it's usually just not used anymore. If it is used, I've unbound it to something else. But yeah, you have WASD to move, space is to jump, and then your abilities would be up here, like 1 through 4. E would be to use, R would be to reload, Q might be something, maybe for the spike or something. And then in an MMO, it's pretty much the same thing. You use like 1 through 5, you would hold shift, 1 through 5 gives you another 5 keys, control 1 through 5 gives you another 5 keys, and so on and so forth. Like, it's really easy to use your left hand over here because that's the keyboard was built for right-handed people. However, being a left-handed gamer, we have a different set of problems. So you may be thinking, hey, why don't you just use WASD with your right hand? Great question. One, it becomes super uncomfortable. So even if I were to space it out properly, like if I were to just use it within the same position, which, like, if you go to a PC cafe or if you're playtesting something at a convention, which is always a nightmare for me, which is why I hardly ever wait in those lines for PC games, this is really uncomfortable. My arm is now at a 45-degree angle, and my wrist is also constantly craning up and down to reach keys. So if I'm on WASD over here, I'm already at an angle. So let's push the keyboard over here so I could be a bit more comfortable and a bit more straight. Now, control and shift and caps lock and tab and tilde are now on my thumb. So I'm kind of losing a bit of range here. Yeah, I can like bind control to jump. Sorry, my camera's focusing. There we go. I can bind control to jump, no problem. Shift to walk is still somewhat doable. However, now my hand has to be raised in order to do that. Now, if I were to just use default controls, spacebar would be jump, but now I am pulling my pinky back all this way and having to, again, lift my hand up in order to, like, stab down the spacebar. That is extremely uncomfortable. So, yeah, that's why we don't do that. So now let me explain to you what the onboarding experience for a left-handed gamer like is in every single game. So even though there could be a fantastic tutorial for your game, it doesn't matter for a left-handed gamer because the first thing we are going to do is press escape and go into the keybinds menu. And then we have to figure out what the game's language is. So in a hero shooter such as Valorant, we have the first thing on the menu, literally the first menu is controls, actions, use ability 1, 2, 3, and ultimate. There is no explanation. If you've never played a hero shooter before, regardless if it's Valorant, Overwatch, whatever, there is no explanation as to what this means. What do these abilities do? Now, granted, in Valorant, on every single agent, it's all different, of course. Deadlock's ability 1 is different than Chamber's ability 1. Of course, it's all different. Of course, it should be. However, this does not show me where on my screen the abilities are. Now, yes, I could look down, look at the binds, and say, okay, there are my abilities. Fine, I'll concede that. However, what is incredibly helpful, and I know this is not easy to implement a lot of the time, it would be incredibly helpful if you hover over here, a video comes up to show you what everything does. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth do an excellent job of this, and it's not even in the keybinds menu. It just shows you what like the materia does or the weapon ability does. A lot of games are doing this now, but I notice in shooters, it's not the case. It's pretty frustrating. So in a keybinds menu, what I need to do is I need to figure out what is comfortable for my hand. And so you may think, okay, so WASD is obviously not comfortable for you, John. Why not just sort of emulate WASD, but over here? Great question. So what a lot of left-handed gamers do is they use PL apostrophe quote. So they sort of sit here. This way their thumb is on spacebar like it would be for WASD users or right-handed players. And then their pinky is back on shift and control. However, Valorant does not have this problem, which I'm glad to see, but a lot of games will not allow you to rebind the enter key. That's because enter will bring up the chat. Sometimes it's just a hard-coded button, and so you can never bind it to something else. And I understand why. Sometimes it's like rebinding escape, right? Like bringing up the options menu, you have to press escape to bring it up the first time, so they often don't want to let you rebind that button. So enter, a lot of times, is hard-coded. And then we have bracket and backspace. With backspace, it's consolidating two buttons into one, because on this side of the keyboard, you have tilde and 1. Over here, you just have backspace taking up the size of two keys. So you're losing a little bit of real estate here. Yeah, so it is viable. However, it's just not nearly as comfortable. So we then have to look elsewhere. Growing up when I was a little kid, I used the arrow keys. However, when I was like 18 or 19 and started playing Quake somewhat competitively, I realized I'm really struggling to figure things out here because I'm either using delete or end or page up and constantly like really stretching my hand to hit these keys up here. Control was sometimes like a grappling hook in Quake 2. And then I forget what I used it for Quake 3, but when I was like 18 or 19 and started playing competitively and going to LAN parties, I quickly realized like, hey, there's a lot of real estate over here. So I started using the number pad. And I've discovered in recent years, a lot of left-handed gamers use the number pad. And so in this keybinds menu, now what I'm doing is I'm looking to where, like what real estate I have available for like this game's special buttons. So every game you need movement, or every shooter you need movement. So my movement is on 5, 1, 2, 3. So instead of WASD, my 5 is forward, my 2 is back pedal, 1 is strafe left, 3 is strafe right. So my middle finger is resting on 5, and I have regular range of motion here, just like a right-handed gamer would have on WASD. So then I say, okay, this game has abilities, 1, 2, 3, and ultimate. These keys up here, the slash, star, and minus, great. I can just put them up there. That's pretty comfortable for me. But I do have to remove numlock because numlock is not an actual bindable key. If it is a bindable key, when you press numlock, it's not only going to perform the function in the game that you've bound it to, but it's going to turn off the number pad, and then all of these buttons change function. So 7 becomes home, 9 becomes page up, 3 becomes page down, 1 becomes end, 4, 8, 6, and 2 become the arrow keys, 0 becomes insert, and so on and so forth. So I actually remove my numlock key to prevent myself from accidentally pressing it, which used to happen all the time, again, when I was 18, 19, first figuring this stuff out. So I've lost a key up here, and now I'm over here. So for right-handed gamers, R would be reload. I put my reload on 4. 6, I don't really use so much, but period is my plant the spike. 0 is to walk, and then right arrow is to crouch. So again, I could pretty freely do that with my thumb. And then when it's time for my ultimate, I just click page up, and I'm good to go. So this is sort of what it looks like here. So my buy menu is still on B. These sort of menu keys I often don't rebind, especially in MMOs. It's just like there's so many menus to go into that it's almost easier to just leave it and deal with it. But the core function gameplay keys, I'm always moving around. So let's just buy a gun here, and then we're good to go. So on my mouse as well, I also have to change things around a bit. So funny enough, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but funny enough, growing up, my first PC had Windows 95. It was an IBM Aptiva. And I believe in Windows 95, you could not switch the functions of left and right click. I think that came in Windows 98 or possibly 2000. If it was in Windows 95, my parents just didn't know about it. So like I said, my mom was left-handed, my dad's left-handed, I'm left-handed. And so we just had the mouse on the left side, but then my middle finger was always left clicking. So like I fire with my middle finger. And then this is mostly because of Quake, but my jump is on right click. And then my interior buttons are zoom and then alternate fire, which I guess let me buy a gun with an alternate fire. Oh, sorry. In this game, zoom is an alternate fire. But, you know, in a game like, I don't know, Doom Eternal or something, like alt fire would be on the interior. This button right here. And then zoom would be on this. So sort of like that. And I'm not a toggle zoomer. I'm a hold zoomer. That's just me. Everybody's a little bit different. Okay, so I'm just looking at my notes here to make sure that I've covered everything. But yeah, so like onboarding in a game is always very frustrating, especially in a tutorial, because oftentimes in a tutorial, and I was thinking about making a second account, like going through the actual tutorial of Valorant and showing you like how annoying it is to like come up to a wall and it says, hey, press E to use this. My hand's all the way over here. Now I need to hit escape, go into the keybinds menu, find use, which isn't even in the actions. Is it in the actions? No, it is not in the actions. It's in equipment. Like sometimes like the buttons are not really where you would think they are, which again, you're just spending time searching keybinds. And so that can be very frustrating. So like oftentimes, like I said, you're going through a tutorial, you come up to something, it says press E to use, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to press E, so let me find E in here and then rebind it to something else. And so for me, plus is use, which is easy enough for me to just hit. But then you come to the next thing and it's like pick up the spike with, I don't know, Q, whatever. In this game, you just walk over the spike, but it's like plant the spike with Q or something. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to press Q to plant the spike. Let me go into the menu and find where it is to plant the spike and rebind it. But oh, wait, I think I'm going to be planting the spike a bit more often. So let me put that on a different key that I have a bit more access to. So you're constantly going into keybind menus, trying to figure out what the game wants you to do in the core gameplay loop, and then making that work for yourself. And so this is just sort of like a plea to game developers making PC games. Please put the game in the hands of a left-handed player, or even some, like, I hate to use this word, but it's like, it's an accessibility thing. That's really what it comes down to. And oftentimes when we talk about accessibility in games, we talk about difficulty levels. We talk about, you know, boss health. Like it comes up all the time in Souls games conversations. That is not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about like making the game actually accessible to physically play on a mouse and keyboard. That's what I'm talking about here. And so giving us the ability to change keys, or not only change keys, but explain what those keys are used for and how often you're going to be using them and like what the core gameplay loop is, allows us to get into the action faster. A right-handed gamer literally just starts playing the game. Left-handed gamers and folks with, you know, difficulty using their left hand on WASD have to go through all these hoops just to start playing the game they want to play that they paid for. And so please, if you're a PC developer, please put these sorts of options in your game. Make your keybinds or your keybind menu a bit more explanatory as to what you actually want from people and what things are actually going to be used and how they're going to be utilized. Again, really helpful in your tutorial to show like, hey, you're going to pick up the spike, you're going to plant the spike. Great. Now I've got to find the spike key and so on and so forth. I want to keep harping on it. The other thing that I want to mention is the actual accessibility of equipment. So gaming laptops, for the vast majority of them, have a condensed keyboard. So like they may have arrow keys somewhere, but your gaming laptop is pretty much just this. And so the vast majority of gaming laptops, I'm never going to buy. Like I physically cannot use them without being very uncomfortable. And so that's a challenge. So any laptop that I purchase for the purpose of gaming has to have a full keyboard, which again limits my options. Not only that, but on regular PC, finding mice that work for left-handed gamers is really difficult because there are so few options. Not every manufacturer has an ambidextrous mouse. I think SteelSeries has one. I know Razer has one. This is a Razer Lance Head Tournament Edition. But even then, some games don't allow you to bind certain keys because of the way they're wired. And so with a Razer Lancehead, the side buttons are actually like wired together. So like I'm clicking the interior on this side with my index finger right now, and it's doing the same thing as this. So like these buttons are wired to the same circuit. So like they are always going to emulate each other. They're always mirrored. However, not every mouse is like that. And so that becomes very difficult because some games won't even recognize the buttons on the right side. I've run into that problem before. I forget with what manufacturer, but it's a very real thing. The other problem is that when a manufacturer does make a mouse that's either that is for left-handed players, they often don't update that one either with like the new features that the right-handed one comes out with. Razer is very guilty of this, and I was super surprised by it because the CEO of Razer is left-handed, and that's why they made a left-handed Death Adder. The Death Adder is like the most popular Razer product that is sold, and yet they never updated the features on the left-handed Death Adder. So when the regular Death Adder, or the right-handed Death Adder, was getting these like really nice rubber contour grips like the Lancehead has here, the left-handed one never got an update. And so it was like it was unfair, if I'm being honest. Like it was very frustrating, especially because the lefty one had so many problems. Like I had like 4 or 5 of them over the years. They just kept dying, so I had to switch to the Lancehead, which has been nice. But right-handed mice, or most mice in general, are contoured to the right hand. Very few mice out there, unless they are specifically made for the left hand, feel comfortable in a left hand. And again, oftentimes, like your trigger buttons over here are not also going to be on this side. Logitech had a mouse that allowed you to flip the buttons for left or right. It was a very ambidextrous mouse, but they no longer manufacture it, and so it's out of stock. I noticed that Pulsar does have a left-handed mouse. They actually have 2 of them, a regular size and a mini size, out of stock. I don't know how long they've been out of stock for, but they are out of stock. Also, and this is just a cosmetic thing, mice are constantly released in new colorways and have new feature sets and new sort of like grips, but the left-handed versions just get black. Like we're totally left out of those options, and so like that expression is just left out for left-handed gamers. Not that big of a deal to me, but I know some folks really care about that. Yeah, I think that's growing up left-handed. WAS becomes uncomfortable very quickly. Why not use arrow keys? Lack of explanation in onboarding. My numpad config. Why do I remove numlock? Give an INI file or console commands to rebind, especially if in a game is in early access. I think I mentioned this. But if your game is in early access and you don't yet have a keybind menu or a GUI, please, for the love of God, just either give your testers an INI file to edit for keybinds, or at the very least console commands. We will figure it out. We've been doing it our whole lives. We understand we have to make things force things to accommodate to us. It is a struggle. I'm not saying it should be the easiest thing in the world. It'd be nice if it was, but just give us some option to rebind keys in early access games. And then lack of support from manufacturers. So that's being a left-handed PC gamer. It's not the end of the world. I always figure it out, but starting new PC games is always an endeavor, and it just becomes very frustrating. And it's actually why I prefer to play games on console, because using a controller, this is an SNES pad, so this is old, but this is what I grew up using. It's easy enough to just use thumbs. It's super simple. Luckily, a lot of Pro controllers, like the PS5 Pro controller, has back paddles. Those are super helpful. But again, just using thumbs, your thumbs are pretty ambidextrous, but it does sometimes require very interesting grips. Like Souls games, I sometimes play like this with my hand up. If I'm running on torrent, like in Elden Ring, just using that example, I actually have my fingers like this. So I'm hitting circle with the inside of my right index finger, and then jumping with my thumb. You're constantly contorting your hand, but it's a bit more comfortable to use controllers like this rather than mouse and keyboard. So that's being a left-handed gamer. If you're a PC developer, please heed these sorts of accessibility things. Reach out to left-handed gamers. Put your games in the hands of left-handed gamers. If you yourself are a left-handed gamer, I would love to know what your keybinds are. I know a lot of folks use NumberPad, but I'm curious what other folks use. But yeah, look up left-handed gaming. It's a whole thing. Again, only 10% of the population is left-handed, but still, we want to play all your games too. All right, thanks for watching. See you later.